Hey, Walter. There's a question from a friend of mine. Question is, why were the two books of Enoch and Jasar excluded from the Bible?
Why were the books of Enoch excluded? And after all, Jude did quote from the book of Enoch. So why was it excluded? Well, if you read the book of Jude and you read Peter, Peter comes to the defense of Jude. That means the more prominent apostle actually defended Jude in this issue. And the question is, why did it need a defense? It probably needed a defense because some people rose up and said, excuse me, why are you quoting from the book of Enoch? But he said, even Enoch proclaimed the coming of Christ. And it doesn't necessarily mean that he meant the book of Enoch. Now, if we take the book of Enoch, why is it today that New Age philosophy has the book of Enoch as its central dogma? And that is disturbing to me. And why is it not in the Bible? Why has it been left out? Why has the Gospel of Thomas been left out? Why has the Gospel of Peter been left out? And then the list becomes very, very long. Now, you know, it's amazing. If you take the Old Testament, when the canon of the Old Testament was finished, it took 3 to 4 centuries, 3 to 4 centuries until the Old Testament apocryphal books were written. So there was a gap of 3 to 4 centuries. When it comes to the New Testament, the canon of the New Testament was complete at the death of John. And it took 3 to 4 centuries before the apocryphal books were added. In both cases, you have this centuries gap. And the canon that we have today does not include them. And I believe they're not included because God doesn't want them in there. But I know that Roman Catholicism wants them in there. And I can see why. Because most of them support their doctrine. If you take the epistle of Barnabas, it very strongly supports Sunday worship. Because it clearly says that there was a transference from Sabbath to Sunday. They certainly would want that in their Bible. But the same epistle of Barnabas says that the hyena changes its sex and that the weasel gives birth through the mouth. Now, that is a pretty pathetic biological expose because it's not true. So just because there's something they like in it, they put it into the Bible, but the rest of it is, excuse me, dribble. So why should I want to accept it? And the same with all of those apocryphal books, no matter how nice they sound. If you take the Gospel of Thomas, well, then the cross walked behind Jesus as he came out of the cross, out of the grave, and started speaking. That's idolatry. That's pathetic. And yet these are the apocryphal books that are being held up to the world as the most magnificent. If I believe in inspiration, then I, of necessity, have to believe in preservation. Because what's the point of reading a Bible that hasn't been preserved for me as God would wish it to have? So the book of Enoch is not in there, and I believe God doesn't want it in there.